When did that catalyst of the journey start? And I also want to talk about when was the clicking point or the pivot where it's like, okay, it all clicks.
Everything I did up until that point was seeking external validation. I hated that I was poor. I hated that I was...
What's up? My name is Luke Jacobsma, and welcome to the show, the Rebel Project Podcast. I'm super excited to announce that this is the first episode, and we are going to be jumping right in with my guest, Daniel Walton, who runs a digital marketing agency here in Orange County. And we're going to be talking about how he discovered his purpose in life and how he realized that he was playing a little bit small in life and realized that he needed to take responsibility and find a love deep within himself in order for him to step into his true power. And if you guys know anything about the Rebel Project, we believe in clarity, we believe in passion, we believe in purpose in order to step into your full power. So we're going to be talking about that today with my guest, Daniel Walton. So what's up, Dan? How you doing?
What's up, Luke? It's an honor to be on the show with you. Obviously, we connected when we first met back at the gym, and I just love seeing what you're about, all the content you're putting out, just your mindset. So it's an honor to be the first guest here.
Yes, man. I love it. And as you said, like when we first met, we met and there was just an instant connection. I felt like between both of us, and over the last couple of years, I feel like we've kind of like paid attention to each other, and just I've loved watching your journey, and I've loved seeing the acceleration in your growth recently, like and specifically in the last 2 years. I noticed like when I met you, you were a powerful dude, and I was like, man, there's something special about this guy. But I've really noticed you just leaning in hard to who you are and what you want out of life. And it's been really inspiring to watch, which is exactly why I wanted you on the show. So why don't we start with telling me about where you're at right now in your life, in your business, what's going on in Daniel's world?
Yeah. So right now I just run a digital marketing agency. We have 28 or 29 employees now, so it's growing pretty fast, kind of crazy. But yeah, I think like you said, it's just things seem to like be clicking really fast. Even for me, it's kind of a little bit crazy just seeing like the growth. But when you plant a seed, you don't always see like the fruits of that labor. And then when the seed sprouts up, it still looks small. And then it starts growing and all these roots start developing, and then it starts growing really fast. And I feel like that's kind of what's happening now in my life. Is I've been working on myself for years, and now it's like finally the fruits of the labor are starting to pay off. But it's been 8.5 years on my entrepreneurial journey, a lot of failures, a lot of mistakes, all by myself, my own cause. And now it's just like removing myself, from being my biggest enemy, getting out of my own way. And I think that's what you have seen and a few other people have seen too over the last like couple of years.
Yeah. That's interesting that it's been such a long journey for you. Cause like when I met you, obviously it seemed like you had everything together, and this was what did we just
like 2 years ago?
2022?
Yeah, about 2 years ago.
Early 2022. And it just seems like you kind of hit the bottom of that hockey stick, and now your trajectory is just up and up. And it's like you said, like you planted the seed years ago of who you are, what you want out of your life, your future, your capabilities, and stepped into your greatness. And the last 2 years, it's just clicked. Because when I met you, you didn't even have a digital marketing agency.
No, it was. I think I just
had
the idea
launched.
and
It was
like
just you.
starting. Yeah, it was just me.
And you just said 28 employees?
Yeah, for free for a year ago. I had 2 employees.
A year ago, so that's massive growth.
It's been nonstop. I mean, I just invest very heavily back into my team, back into myself. My lifestyle hasn't really changed that much. It's just what it is. But yeah, I think all those, everyone like wants to build. They focus on building first, which is great. And that's what I did. And that's why I was getting in my way for so long, was because I hadn't healed all these traumas that we carry. Right. And it's not until you heal yourself can you really build in the right direction. And I think that's where this growth has just accelerated in the last year, like 2 years, is like I've finally healed myself of all these unhealed traumas. I've been accepting of who I am. I love myself first and foremost. Like I love the man that I am. I go to myself for advice. And now I can finally build in the right direction, like build a team, build other people around me. And now I'm, in this point where I want to start giving to other people, showing other men the way. That's why I'm here with you. That's why we connect too, because we realize there's a lot of flaws in society, and I think a lot of it stems from men not being the men that they're supposed to be. And, you know, it takes leaders like yourself, like myself, to really step up and show people what needs to be done.
Of course. Of course. I think stepping into leadership is crucial for men, especially. So you talked about healing traumas and kind of coming to terms with who you are and learning to love that person deep within, give yourself grace, and also find that inner strength. And you mentioned you've been working on self-development for about 8.5 years, 8 years plus.
Longer. Yeah. My grandpa gave me the book Think and Grow Rich when I was in high school.
Oh, wow.
I read, you know, How to Win Friends and Influence People. So it was always something I was just passionate about. Like, you know, all my book collection has always been one of like two things, either personal development or spiritual growth, like, and then occasional money making books, but mostly like those two topics. And so it's been something I've been working on. But when you're surrounded by, you know, people that just aren't on that level, that aren't developed, you know, very low vibration, low frequency people, you know, I love my family. They're the best family I could have ever had, but they just didn't know, right? Yeah. They didn't have access to Tony Robbins. Like, you can pull up these people, these gurus, find this information from the internet. Before, it wasn't that easy and accessible, right? So both sides of my family just have all this unhealed trauma. Everybody I grew up around, all this unhealed trauma, you know, these low income neighborhoods, they just have all this unhealed trauma. They never developed themselves. And so although I was working on myself and was investing in these things, I didn't realize like how much I was actually my own, you know, my own biggest enemy, right?
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the unhealed trauma for a minute, because you're talking about your family. You said you have your unhealed trauma. So is this actually trauma that you're talking about? Did you have was there an event or something that your family has gone through and they just haven't been able to heal from? Or are you talking about like kind of just habits that have been passed down from grandpa to father to you, and then, you know, just not knowing any better, and or having the desire or having access to people who are on that level? Like, can you define what you mean by trauma a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of habits and trauma, right?
Okay.
You have to like first stop, and like that's where like self-awareness is so important. I think so many men lack self-awareness. I mean, people in general lack self-awareness. So you have to like stop and really analyze yourself, like your thoughts, your actions, your emotions, like what's causing it, like what can I do to change it? But it's a combination of trauma and like bad habits. You know, like for me, there were definitely some situations in childhood that I didn't like. You know, for example, my dad didn't work for like almost 12 years of my life. So it was like my mom, it just put a lot of stress on my family.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted to be this provider. And I think like I said, you have to first heal yourself before you can build yourself. And I was trying to build without healing myself and becoming aware of like certain things that and just accepting certain things in myself that, you know, I didn't think were okay. Right. I think a lot of people have these like fears of money. And when you grow up with no money, everybody looks at like these low income people, they look at money as this bad thing. And it's like, no, it's just a tool, right? It's no different than your cell phone. It's a tool that can really change your life and really can amplify things. But if you use it the wrong way, it can, you know, cause some harm. But I think most people go about it and they actually get it, and it can actually really amplify their life and make everybody's life better. So just like limiting beliefs, like poor habits, thinking, everything. It's like you just have to evolve in every area of life, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. And so many people, they just focus on the financial. They think that's going to change it. And that's what I did. But I was causing all these problems in my life to happen because all I did was ever chase like, okay, I want to do this money thing. I want to like chase this business. And that's where I was like just reliving these things that I hadn't quite healed yet or worked on myself yet, that were just bad habits or unhealed traumas.
Okay. So what I'm hearing from you is that you saw some things that you wanted to do differently than your family. The way they were thinking, the habits that they were doing. And you said, I can go out and fix this. But you didn't quite know exactly how much work it was going to be as you set out on this journey of self-development, entrepreneurship, healing yourself. Like, when did you realize, like, man, I've got some things that I've got to rewire. I've got to heal myself. Like, when was that realization for you? Like teenage years, recently?
Yeah.
You know, when did that catalyst of the journey start? And then I also want to talk about when was the clicking point or the pivot where it's like, okay, it all clicks, right? Because I feel like those are two separate moments.
Yeah, it is. So like I said, I was always into personal development, but I think there's a lot of people that are into things that don't really commit to things, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't committed to it. And for me, it was, I decided, like, I remember it literally the day, I think I was listening to Big Sean's Detroit 2 album. It dropped that night, and it was just like light bulbs went off, like just so many similarities. Like for him, he was depressed, like all these things. At the time I was depressed. I was suicidal. My parents like just divorced. Both of my brothers were overdosing on drugs. I had a heartbreak. I had a business partner open up credit cards in my name. I was in debt, and I got arrested for a crime I didn't commit. So it was like, I literally hit rock bottom. Like, I was like suicidal, jacked up on SSRIs, had anxiety medication. And I'm like, am I going to continue doing this, like being a victim and saying like, oh, poor me, like these circumstances suck? Or am I going to finally step up to the plate and be the person that says, you know what, enough's enough. I'm not going to be like my certain family members.
Yeah.
I'm not going to keep saying like, oh, this isn't my fault. Everything's my fault. From that moment on, I decided to take extreme ownership for everything. I decided to put my pants on. I decided to go pursue business. I decided to do all these things. So these things happened for me to grow. Right now, I look back and I'm like so grateful. These are some of the most, they were some of the most difficult times, but they made me so strong. And now I have this unshakable mindset, but I had to go through those like really challenging moments of my life.
Right.
And it was a very clear moment when I went from being, I'm into personal development to I'm committed to personal development. Right.
Yeah,
and so it was like that commitment, and I committed to myself for, this was like 3.5 years ago, like literally the night Big Sean's Detroit 2 album dropped. I was like, all right, like this is me versus me.
Yeah.
I'm no longer making any excuses. I'm not going to be a victim for anything. Everything that happens to me is my fault, good or bad, doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Life either happens to you or happens for you. And it was like, I just decided to take that mindset, and it was a long time. I thought I'm like, you know what, if I commit to a year of just working on myself, I'm going to become a man that I admire. I'm not going to date any girl, because I realized I was codependent, right? I was seeking, everything I did up until that point was seeking external validation. I hated that I was poor. I hated that I was in this environment, that I didn't have money, that I grew up in this. And so I was seeking external validation in every single thing that I did. I'm going to pursue this business in cannabis because I'm going to make millions and everyone's going to look at me cool, right? And like all these different things that I was chasing, these beautiful women, I needed a beautiful woman to define who I was as a man. And so everything was for external validation. And then in that moment, I was like, you know what? All that matters is that I love myself. When you love yourself, you're never going to be alone. And, I was heartbroken, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to love myself. I'm going to become the man that I admire, and I'm going to work on myself. I'm not dating a single woman for a year. And it ended up being over 2 years that I had like really committed to that path of just working on myself, like dating myself, working on becoming the man that I looked up to and admired. And I stopped listening to everybody that wasn't in a position that I didn't admire. Right. Mm-hmm. So certain family members, certain friends, I just stopped listening to the things that they said, because sometimes like that's that external validation. You look at them and you want their opinion, but do you want their lifestyle? No, you don't. So why are you listening to people whose lifestyle that you don't want? And so it was just like, okay, I'm not listening to other people that don't have the life that I want. And I'm just going to seek my own actual validation, seek my own love. And now that was, like 3.5 years ago. We met like about 2 years, a little less than 2 years ago. So probably like halfway through that journey. And I feel like things have just really been accelerating, which is really fun.
Yeah. I want to unpack what you just said, because you just said so much. First thing I wanted to like say was like, well, I mean, congrats and good on you for coming to these realizations and discoveries. Something that I think is so pivotal and subtle, but so important, is that you said, I realized that life was happening for me. And when you're in that mindset of life is happening to me versus life is happening for me, like it literally changes your world. Just that little word, to me or for me. Mm-hmm. If you see life happening for you, everything is an opportunity and everything is within your control. But if everything is happening to you, you feel like you're constantly under attack and you're just always in a fight. And how fun is that? No. Year after year after year. And then you talked about hitting rock bottom, having friends, take advantage of you, getting accused of a crime you didn't commit, being addicted to, chemicals and pills and things like that. So it's like, Do you feel like hitting rock bottom was necessary for you to have the realization that, hey, I've got to do something different? Or do you feel like anybody who's on the self-development commitment path is going to find that within themselves? Or do you feel like bouncing off rock bottom is necessary?
I think everybody has a different definition of what rock bottom is. I don't know if it's necessary, but I think at some point you realize that it is like you versus you, and you commit to being better than you were yesterday, and you commit to like, okay, even if I'm going to improve only 1% every day, that's it.
Yeah.
And I think once you commit to that constant growth, the path happens, right? So I don't know if it's necessary to hit rock bottom, but for me, it absolutely was, right? I lived in hell. I went to hell, right? And I realized like hell's a mindset. You're living in hell, or you can be in heaven, right?
Right.
It's all perspective, as you said, right? Life either happens to you or it happens for you.
Yeah.
And I was letting life happen to me, but I always had these dreams, ambitions, this like vision of myself that I wanted, this vision of greatness that I wanted for my family, for myself, for my friends. So it was like I always worked toward that, but I didn't even realize like how much I was in my own way. And most of it is just a simple perspective shift, right? It's like when you want these things, like sometimes we're not even aware of like what we're asking for. And sometimes God has a different way of getting us there. For me, it was like putting me through these things, putting me in jail, like having heartbreak, having like a broken bank account, like having like everything broken. But as you know, from we met at the gym, you have to break things down in order for things to grow. And sometimes we get so caught up in that, and like that's that victim mindset that I see so many men. I mean, even like one of my siblings is just like a big victim, and I just wish like he would just realize that like he just is such a powerful being, and so many men too are like these powerful beings if they just take control of that power,
right,
instead of giving that power to something else, right, giving it to this external situation or this other person.
Did you find that you know, when you had this epiphany, when you had this realization that, you know, I've got to love myself, I've got to be in charge of my life, I've got to make things happen, and I've got to go this path. Did you find that it was challenging to switch from that mindset that you used to have to the new mindset, and then also stick to the new habits that were going to fortify this new mindset of yours? Or like, was it just easy? Hey, I'm just going to go this direction, and here we go. Or did you struggle with like getting up at 5 a.m., making sure you hit the gym every single day, making sure you're eating good, or like, were those old habits hard to shake? Or was it pretty much just like, hey man, I cannot do this anymore, and it was just like a 180 pivot, and you just never looked back?
Yeah, I wrote the quote down. I should pull it up. This is it. I think when you, like, I've always been a committed person, but when you like realize, when you like come to a realization of something, it's like you can't like change your like you can't like unlearn something, right? So like once you learn something, it's like you can't like unknow it. And this is from Rudolf Steiner, his book, and he says every idea which does not become an ideal for you slays a power within your soul. Every idea which becomes an ideal creates within you a vital force, right? And when you have that idea that becomes an ideal, right, this like realization, you can't not do what it is. So for me, it was like I realized these things were the reason I was where I was at, so I'm not going to do those things anymore. Like, is it hard? Sure, but like anything great is hard, right? And what does hard mean? Hard just means it takes a long time, right? I thought it's like, okay, maybe a year I'd be like the person I'm proud of. It took like over 2 years of just dedication to that purpose. But I think that's where a lot of people mess up, is like they're not committed to that. Like they lack commitment. I don't. I've always been a committed person. If I said I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And so I committed that to myself. And I think I realized too, part of one of the realizations was like I was breaking little commitments to myself prior to that. So now I'm like, I don't break commitments, not to myself, not to anybody. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. If I say I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and hit the gym, I'm going to wake up at 5 a.m. and hit the gym. It doesn't matter what time I get to bed.
Yeah. So you said it took, when you started this journey, you said you were going to give yourself a year. You sacrificed basically life, social life, no dating, no extracurricular activities. I'm just got to focus on me. You thought it was going to take a year. It ended up taking 2. And like you just said, it took me about 2 years to become a man that I'm proud of. Is that journey worth it?
100%. Yeah. You can never go back. Like once you become, like I would go through it all again. Like I wish I just knew what I knew now, because like I would have already been a millionaire like years ago. I would have already been in the place like I wanted to be, but I didn't realize those things. And I think life's going to be hard no matter what. You have to choose your hard, right? Do you want it to be hard because of the regret that you have from not being your true self, like your authentic self, the highest version of yourself? Or do you want it to be hard because you're doing the hard things that are going to make you better?
Yeah. Was there a separation between the man that you knew you could be proud of and the man you were 2 years ago? Did you feel like a disconnect? Like, this is the guy I should be. Like, this is the greatness that I possess. But you're looking down the road thinking it's a year. It's ended up to be 2. Like, when was the moment where the guy who wasn't proud of himself met the guy who was proud of himself? And can you describe that feeling or that like realization that, man, like, wow, I know that I love myself. I know that I'm proud of myself. I am the man that I thought I could be, and I will be, and I'm going to protect this. Like, can you tell me that moment where the old you met the new you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like a little over a year ago, I guess 2 Novembers ago. So November 2022.
Okay.
I had, this was like about 6 months after I think we met.
Yeah.
I wrote a contract with myself. I said, okay, I had multiple business failures up until that point. Like I wasn't committing to that process. I wasn't fulfilling certain commitments. And, at the time when I wrote this contract, I was kind of running in all these different directions. Like I was always a hustler. Like, so I had multiple businesses, different things. None of it really like worked out. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm not changing things up. So I literally wrote a contract with myself. I said, I'm committed to this plan for the next 6 months. I'm going to develop this new business. I'm going to scale it to a $10,000 per month income. And at the time I was serving at a restaurant, right? So I was serving, I'd work out, and then I'd work on my business. And I committed to that journey for 6 months. I'm not deviating. And I hit it with like a month. It took me 5 months to achieve that plan that I set out after. I wrote out like what it was. And I showed up every single day. I read that contract out to myself, and I stuck to that plan. And it was the most crazy feeling in the world, just like achieving something that you had been working on. And for me, it was like years, because like I always wanted to make that. Like I had never earned that much money in a month, and now I built this business that I was doing that. And it was just like the coolest feeling ever, because there were challenges, right? When you work in the restaurant industry, everybody likes to drink. So like showing up to work, everyone's like, hey, do a shot. Table, like your loyal guest is like, hey, take a shot with me. I'm like, I'm good. Like they're like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I don't drink. They're like, what do you mean you don't drink? I'm like, it's just like weird explaining those things and just being in that environment. So you really have to, find ways to hold yourself accountable, right? For me, it was like writing a contract out with myself and being very clear on what it is I was going to do and what it is I wasn't going to do. But that moment was like, I think the first moment that like I had truly like actualized something that I had been working on. And it was an incredible feeling. I remember, the date of just like being able to quit that, because I wanted to leave the restaurant industry. I had lost all my money. So that's when I picked up serving. I was a server for like 3 years after, right when I got arrested. And I didn't want to just continue like doing the things that I had done. Like my first business was in the cannabis industry, was trapping, like selling drugs, doing all this stuff like for quick, easy money. And that's where like I was getting into trouble, because when you're doing things, when you're building in the wrong direction, right? That's why I say you have to heal yourself first and then build. I was building before I healed myself, and I was just continuing to like get into trouble, different kinds of trouble, right?
Right.
Like whether it was my fault or not. And so that's why like I always just say, like, you got to work on yourself first and foremost. Like, personal development is the path.
Yeah. No, what I love about what you just said is like you stripped it down to the bare essentials and you wrote yourself a contract to remind yourself every day, hey, this is what is important to me. This is what I want to commit to. And you said, I got to go to work so I can pay for my life, and I'm going to work on my business because I want to build something, and I'm going to do this for 6 months. You gave yourself a very specific task or mission. You gave yourself a time period, and you eliminated everything. I say just, starting from a clean plate, but it's like you gave up a lot of things and you just had a singular focus. And I think that that's so important. And especially in today's world where we're always connected to something and you've got input coming from everywhere, it seemed like you just blocked everything out and said, look, I just need to put my head down and work on this because it's important not only to my future, but it's important to who I am as a man. And it's also confirming within that you have what it takes to prove you've been healed, to prove that you can overcome family trauma or family habits or family, ways of thinking, and step into that man who is someone that you are absolutely proud of and you're excited about and you celebrate. What is it like today for you to protect that man?
Yeah, it's still a process. Like every day, there's battles. I think one of the biggest things that I notice is like people always like try to add things to their plate, and it's not about adding things. It's more about like removing. Like, what are the things that you need to say no to that are holding you back? For me, like the biggest growth that I had, I think the two biggest things that really impacted me during my journey was, one, putting myself in the right environment. So I moved to Newport Beach. I felt completely out of place. Like I was poor, living month to month. I was like, how can I afford this? It's an expensive place to live, but I'm like, I need to be around people with money because nobody around me has money. Everybody around me has been broke my entire life. I don't even know what money really is. So I moved myself to Newport Beach, started working out at high-end gyms. That was one of the best decisions of my life. And then, my blank there for a sec.
So you changed your environment. Yeah. You got yourself around people who are on a different frequency than you. And what's that third thing?
I'm still mind blank where I was going with that.
No. All right, cool. Well, yeah. I mean, so the question was, how do you protect the man who you are today? And it sounds like you realized that your atmosphere had a huge impact on your way of thinking. You realized that the people and the places that you participated in also had an influence on you. And so you wanted to be around people who had the habits you wanted. So you wanted the mindset, the atmosphere, and the habits. Yep. And so how do you continue to keep yourself motivated, right? Because if you're no longer seeking external validation, like, a coach at the gym can motivate you only so far, right? But you still have to tap into yourself, right? When things get hard in your business and it's like, okay, well, you got a tight month, yes, you're doing way, way better than you were years ago, but you got a tight month. What does that self-talk or what does that internal motivation look like? Go, hey man, how do you keep yourself aware and motivated to uphold that contract of staying on this path and not reverting back or falling to, sometimes I call it default mode, to the guy that you're not proud of? I guess staying in your integrity of who you are now. How do you, what are your protection mechanisms or your boundaries in life? Like, what are you saying no to? And what do you also have trouble? Like, what is your little vice that you still have to constantly talk yourself? All right, I got this, man. Nope, I'm not slipping this time.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, so where I was going with that was changing my environment and then stopping smoking weed. I used to smoke weed every single day. So that was the two things. And it's more about like what you say no to. So for a year, I was like, I've never wanted anything to be in control of myself other than me. So I was like, you know what? It was at the time, it was actually just purely like economical. I was auditing my time. I'm like, I don't have enough time in the day. Like, what am I doing? What tasks can I say no to, right? What tasks can I eliminate from my plate to get to where I want to go? And I did the math. I was spending a minimum of 20 minutes per day smoking weed. That's over 5 days per year. I hadn't been on a vacation. I wasn't where I wanted to be. I said, that's 5 days I could be working more, or I can be on a vacation. So I gave up smoking weed. and moving to Newport, those were the two biggest things. So for me, it's like, what are the things that I need to say no to that aren't like moving me closer? And yeah, I think now, like once you get to that level, you realize like the pain is actually, you know, like can be greater from the things that you used to think were pleasurable, right? My old self, like I used to think like going out to a party, like going out to the bars, chasing all these girls was like pleasure.
Yeah.
Now, I realize it's not, it's pain, right? When you realize like, the pain that you get from certain things that you think are actually going to drive pleasure aren't actual, you can't like really go back to it. So, you know, it's like the pain of some of those activities that I used to think were pleasurable outweighs, more than like the pleasure that you would get from it.
Right.
So for me, it's just like becoming aware of like myself and like what I actually like, always being like self-aware. So like reflecting on what it is that I feel.
Sure.
You know, so if I do decide to go out with my friends and we do have like drinks, is that like, did I get to a point where I like end up waking up the next day and regretting it? And if I do that, I have to like check myself. Regret is our guide, right?
Yep.
It's like the voice within us that can tell us what we can and can't do. So I've just been very self-aware of those activities that bring regret,
Yeah.
and then just eliminate those things from me. So now, like more than ever, I feel pretty motivated now that I mean, now that my team's like as big as it is too, it's like I have to just like be on my level every single day. Like
Right.
I can't let anybody like outwork me. You
Yep.
know, when it's like yourself, it's just you versus you. But now I have like all these other people that rely on me to eat. So I just have to show up every day. But as far as like what is my biggest challenge, I think the biggest thing has been probably women have been my biggest distraction. You know, like I'm in control of my vices. I don't smoke weed very often at all anymore. I went a year and a half no weed, and that was like the best thing that happened to me. I realized like how much of a control it had over me.
Yeah.
Now it's more like therapeutic because I don't really shut off. I don't have that off switch, I think. So it can just be something that can be very grounding and like spiritual. But when it comes that, and then, you know, parties, like I don't really drink very often or go out drinking very often either. So
Yeah.
eliminating those two things has helped me. But yeah, I feel like just being a single man in Newport Beach, like there's beautiful women everywhere, and it can be very distracting. Like
Right.
you want to just like chase these women, and I just have to remind myself, you know, not chasing a woman, I'm chasing a dream. So just that's like what I reinforce with myself when I do get those moments of temptation. And I mean, you see them at the gym too. They just wear like absolutely nothing. They're like yoga pants are like sucked up against their, you know, everything.
Yep.
You can see everything, and you're like, oh God, like put your head down. Grant me strength, God. I need to stay focused. So I just like really like am aware of myself.
That's
I
great.
think that's probably the biggest thing. Yeah.
I think it's so important to know yourself better than anyone else, right? And you got to know what distracts you. You got to know what tempts you, and you got to know also how to overcome those things.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, like you say, you got to check yourself. So now that you've become a man that you're proud of, you've got habits in place, you've got a work ethic and a routine, and a trajectory. What is it all for? Like what is the purpose? What is your mission going forward? You know, you've healed yourself. You're building yourself now. Is it just to see where your edge is, or is there something grander or greater that you are working towards with everything that you've got going on with your business, with yourself, with your habits? What's this all for? What's the purpose?
Yeah, I think I've always pursued freedom. So that's like definitely what I've been working toward, is just freedom, financial freedom, mental freedom, like freedom from everything to be able to be the person I want to be. You know, changing my family trajectory. But just, I think the biggest thing, like what's my why, is like seeing like what my potential is, right? And having no limits. Like everyone's like, how much money do you want to make? I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to set a limit to anything. Like what I want to make now is different than what I wanted to make, you know, 5 years ago. And what I want to make in 5 years is going to be different than what I want to make now. So it's just like really fulfilling my true potential, like having no limitations, I think is really what is driving me. Like, where are the areas that I am limiting myself? Is it in a thought? Is it in activity? Is it in certain relationships? And just removing limitations in all areas of life.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So finding your full potential, pushing yourself to the max. How does that affect other people in your life?
I think it's been kind of crazy now that I've been a little bit more public with my life on social media. I don't have a huge social media following yet, but it's impactful. Like, I mean, there's guys that reach out to me all the time, like, I love your message, like, just love seeing what you've been doing. And that's what really inspires me to continue like leveling up now, is just seeing that I am like, my story is impacting people, and like the decisions I make does have an impact on people, because I just think of like myself and all the pain that I went through, like just like literally being completely broken. If I can help somebody else, help another man like not stumble and show them the way, you know, that's really what I feel my purpose is. And you know, like I wrote my purpose out, which is to change my family trajectory for generations to come, and to inspire others to live a God-realized life. Like, I think that's what we're called to be, is realize like God within ourselves. And we're constantly being programmed, constantly being brainwashed, from the music we listen to the TV that we watch, to the food we consume. And we're not even realizing like how great we are. Like, we are these spiritual beings. We are these limitless beings. And so my purpose is now really to help other people, like, you know, realize that within themselves. And I don't know exactly like how I'm going to do that, but that's what I've been called to do. And that's why, like, I wanted to hop on this podcast, because I'm like, this is going to be a good opportunity to at least hopefully inspire it. If I can just touch one person, like help them, you know, level up in a way. So that's what I've really been trying to do, is just get more of this message out there, share, you know, what worked for me with others, and hopefully change people. Because when you want to change the world, you realize like you can't change anything but yourself. So you have to become that person that you admire. And I always wanted to change the world. I was always involved, like going to all these different things. And then I realized, I'm like, the only person you can change is yourself. So just be the best person. If everybody was, you know, the highest version of themselves, we wouldn't have any of these problems in the world.
Right. You know, it's cool what you said too, is like, now where you're at is you want to help others kind of find the promised land, or the paradise that you kind of found within yourself, the peace and pride of being the man that you've built for so many years. There's something magical about it. And one similarity that I see across all men who go down this self-development path from the pit, right, from this low point, or they just develop themselves over years because they just want something different. What I notice is, once they reach this place of, let's call it enlightenment, if you will, they want to give it away. They want to share it. And there's no wanting to hold back. Whereas if I was having this conversation with you, maybe 5 years ago, you might not want to give away these secrets yet, you know, because you didn't realize how valuable it was, but also how simple. And I think that's what the crazy part is. It seems so hard, like you said, but hard just takes time. And I think a lot of people aren't willing to put in the time. And it's awesome that, like, I feel like everyone who reaches this place where you're at, of just kind of leaning into your full power and finding, man, what else am I capable of if I can heal this about myself, heal this about my family, build a business the way I want it, be a leader of 28 people. And all I had to do was just put in the work and show up for 2-3 years.
It's so easy.
Like, that's it.
It's so easy.
But yet 2-3 years, I mean, people can't even like focus on things for more than 12 minutes on YouTube. Like, it's like, so how would you distill your message to somebody who's like maybe completely blind to this kind of lifestyle? How would you create a little bit of fire, or plant a seed, so that the roots can kind of build in them to just like, to maybe if they want to change, they're listening like, dude, I mean, yeah, it's all cool and all, but he doesn't have my situation. He's not where I am, right? He's not in my shoes, right? Still in that, oh, well, life's still happening to me. How would you distill your message to kind of spark fire in someone's heart, to get them to commit to a contract within themselves and see that greatness within them?
Yeah, I think the first thing is like, you have to be very true with yourself, right? You have to like, look at yourself and call yourself out on your own BS, because probably you're BSing to yourself. You're making excuses.
Yeah.
And cut excuses. I think excuses and victimhood are probably the two biggest like toxic traits that anybody can have. If somebody makes excuses, if somebody's a victim, they're not in my circle. They're not around me. I don't spend any time with them in any capacity.
Yeah.
It's like the most toxic thing in the world. And you have to like check yourself and ask yourself, like, is that an excuse? And like, be real with yourself. Like now, like if I make an excuse, I'm like literally saying like, I'm using this excuse, right? Like if I'm late for something, like I'm calling it out in myself, like publicly even, because I mean, there are sometimes like things happen, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, hey, I got in a car accident. I'm using the excuse that I got in a car accident that I was late for this meeting, right?
Yep.
But it's still an excuse regardless, right? So you have to be like very real with yourself, and you can't lie to yourself. So always like be true to yourself first. And I think if you do that and you actually want to be better and want to improve, like just a little bit every day, right? You're not going to be there tomorrow. For me, I thought I was going to be there in a year or less, right?
Which seemed like plenty of time.
Yeah, it's like, it's not going to happen. But if you commit to that process and you don't break commitments, right? Whatever that commitment is for you, like if you're, you know what, maybe not everyone needs to be super rich, right? Everyone has a different dream and ambition, right? You should pursue what that is though. So for you, if it's like, I want to get a 6-pack, I want to lose weight, don't make excuses around those things, right? Like be real with yourself and say like, you know what, I did make an excuse about going to the gym. I stayed up too late, right?
Yeah.
And you have to like hold yourself accountable. And if you can't do that, like you're just never going to become the person that you need to be.
Yeah. No, I think that's step number one, is taking full responsibility. Like you said earlier, extreme ownership, and really going, everything that is happening to me is a result of my actions, my beliefs, or my involvement. Right. And coming to that is critical step number one. Let's go back to purpose a little bit. Do you feel like purpose, your purpose or anyone's purpose in general, is something that you discover or that you define, or is something that's kind of predestined for you?
Yeah, we can go down a rabbit hole about predestined. I think everything is determined. I don't think we have like free will at all. I think we have the illusion of free will, but it's just like stepping into like who we are.
Wait. So you're gonna have to explain this, because the illusion of free will. But you said the thing that you're striving for most in your life earlier is freedom.
Yeah.
So make that make sense for me.
So
free will we don't have, but you're striving for freedom.
Yeah, and I think that's like where we all have this like purpose, this like kind of vision of ourself.
Yeah.
And it's like our purpose is to become that, right? So like that authentic self. So that's like my authentic self, but like everybody else has like their own version of what that is, like that vision of themselves. So for me, it's like just being a free man, not being limited in my beliefs.
Got it.
And like I think that's where the devil comes in, is constantly trying to attack us and like keep us from our full potential, right?
Sure.
Our full like self-realized self.
Yeah.
So, but there's no coincidence. Like I think everything happens exactly as it is. I think this universe is perfectly balanced. Like God is in complete control of everything, and all we can do is show up. But if we listen to that voice of God, our intuition, which is within inside us, that's that vision that we see of ourselves. If we listen to that, like we're just going to be on path. But yeah, for me, it's like that vision is like being completely free, not having any restraints, right? And I think for me, like right now, my focus is really financial focus, so that I can have that financial freedom to then have the impact and buy back my time, so that I can do the things that are going to be the most purpose driven for myself. I don't know if that kind of explained things.
No, yeah, I get that. I get that.
Confuse things more, but
no, absolutely. Yeah. So how does that apply to others?
Like what?
Figuring out their purpose. If someone's just completely lost, I mean, I know I want to do better, but I don't really know what for, or I don't really know where I'm going to go. But they just know something needs to change. Like, what direction would you point them in, and where was the starting line for that? Yeah,
I mean, I think first you got to like change your thinking, right? If we can control our thoughts, we can control essentially the results, right? Because it all starts with like an emotion oftentimes, but if we can change our thoughts around it, right? It's like, I'm feeling this way. Well, I'm not going to let this feeling control me. So I'm going to change my thought, which can then change your action, right? And then if you can control your actions, you can control the outcome.
Right.
So it's like, it all starts with like recognizing like your limiting beliefs in your mind and like really realizing like what it is that you want. I think everybody wants certain things, right? Nobody wants to be fat. Like nobody wants to be poor. Nobody wants to be these certain things. So be real with yourself and accept that it's like, yeah, I do want that thing, right? So like accept it and then ask yourself like, where are the things? What are the things that I'm doing that are holding me back from getting to that person that I want to be, right? Maybe it's just like, I want to be the best mom. I want to be the best dad, whatever it is. Like, okay, well, what are the things that are holding you back from being that? Like, what are those things that aren't getting you closer to that purpose that you have in life, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I think having a definite purpose is very important. I believe that I got that from like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That was a book I read when I was like 19. So I'm 32 now. It's been like 13 years since I wrote out my chief aim in life, my definite purpose.
Yeah.
And that's evolved too as I've evolved. Like every couple of years, I probably like make some tweaks and rewrite what my purpose is. But for years, it was just like reprogramming myself, and changing up all my thinking, because we are oftentimes like, we don't even realize like how limited we are, right? As you mentioned earlier about like, oh, if we came on this podcast, 5 years ago, like what would I have been like, coveting all this information? And that's like a limiting belief, right? It's like limiting that to think that what we know is limited and it's all like our special sauce, right? And that's like kind of how it was, like all these secrets that I had. Now people call me up for questions all the time. I literally just give so much because it all comes back to you, right? Like this universe is a mirror, right? Like I think Newton's third law says for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? So that's like the scientific way to prove essential karma. And we have karma, which is like what you put out, you get back, right? So if you put out like all this, I'm going to hold on to this, I can't share these secrets, that's what you're going to get back, right? And that's why like that was my mindset before. Now I'm like, I'm this infinite being that I'm going to share everything. I live in abundance, I live in prosperity, and I share that, like, all these thoughts, these things with the world. And that's where you got to heal, build, and then give that person away.
Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, is the heal, build, give? I see that's something you post on your Instagram.
Yeah.
Is that just as like your reminder? Is that your mantra? That's like the basic building blocks for you?
I think so. And I think for men in general, like to find their purpose, when they're like struggling, they first have to like heal. Like, what are the things, like, what are the pains that you're trying to escape?
Yeah.
Is it like heartbreak? Is it like, what is it that you're trying to escape from? And what are you doing to escape?
Right.
Right. For me, it was like turning up on the weekends, partying, smoking a lot of weed, escape the pain. And you have to like confront it, right? Yeah. Like you can't be afraid. That's why like I think probably one of my biggest mottos that I always revert back to in myself is like faith over fear, right? Like we have 2 modes of operation. We can operate either out of faith, which is like, even if this happens, or we could operate out of fear, which is like, what if this happens? And so much of the stuff that we do is out of fear, right? People aren't even aware. Like they're afraid of somebody else's opinion, so they never say what they need to say. They never do what they need to do, right? They're afraid of all these things, so fear is going to be one of the biggest players like on your journey. And you have to recognize like, and that's where self-awareness is key, right? You have to like look at yourself and analyze, like, am I afraid? Now for myself, if I'm afraid of something, I force myself to do it. Doesn't matter what it is. Yeah. Right. And you have to operate out of faith. And that's what, like, Jesus' whole message in the Bible is about, right? Is like faith. Yeah. And I think there's, so many people that even like, I see a lot of Christians that are controlled by fear all the time, right? If you've read, what is it? Outwitting. Have you read Outwitting?
Yeah, multiple times.
All his messages about him, it's like crazy. You're like, what? The church is like controlled by the devil, right? It's like they're programming fear into these people's minds, and they're not even aware of like how great they are. And that's where like anything in life comes from, stems from like the seed of faith, right? If you like want to be this musician, this business person, whatever it is, like you have this idea and then you start taking the steps toward that. That's what faith is just like believing that whatever is going to happen is going to happen. And you have a choice at the end of the day. Like, do you want to be controlled by fear? Like, or do you want it to be faith, right? Do you want to see an outcome that you actually want to happen? Or do you want to see an outcome that you don't want to happen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, oftentimes everything we want is either on the other side of pain or the other side of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And the fear, in my experience, usually looks very big and scary, but it's mostly a hologram.
Mm-hmm.
And you can just push through it.
Mm-hmm.
And you realize that the fear is not the limit. The limit is you believing the fear is real.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, it's taking that full responsibility, because if you go, oh my gosh, I got this fear of, you know, being seen, or what are people going to think, or whatever it is, you're fueling that fear yourself. And I think, like you said, it's extreme ownership, and just realizing that, you know what, like, man, that fear is a limiting mindset.
Mm-hmm. It is. Yeah.
And it's hard to shift after you've spent 30, 40 years of your life believing that fear is real, and shifting that to go, you know what, I'm going to walk through the fire anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And having that faith. And like you said, you've got this vision, but the vision is not real until you start walking towards. So I love the phrase actionable faith.
Mm-hmm.
Your faith is proven by your actions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's,
Yeah. I think there's two types of faith, right? There's faith, which is like, I believe in God. I think that's what most people think faith is.
yeah.
And most of those people of faith are controlled by fear, which is like very contradicting, right? You know, as children of God, we're called to operate by faith. So it's like, there's faith, which is like, I believe in a higher power.
Yep.
And then there's faith as in a mode of operation, right? You can only operate by faith or fear. I was like literally just meditating one day and realized it was like this download from God was like, one force is controlling your brain at a time, right? And you can worry about like, oh crap, like, am I going to be able to pay my bill next month, right? You can create these imaginary situations that are all controlled by, that are fear-based, right? But you can't solve them. It's impossible. The situation doesn't even exist, right? The future doesn't exist. The past doesn't even exist. All that exists is this moment. Everything else is an illusion, right? Like literally the future, it doesn't exist. Everything that's happened doesn't exist, right? It's just a memory in our brain, like that we don't, it's not in reality, right? So all we have is this moment. So in this moment, are you going to keep feeding these negative, like limiting thoughts, which are fear-based? Like, what if this happens? Like, if I don't pay my bill, then this is going to happen. I'm going to lose my car. I'm going to lose this, right?
Yep.
So in this moment, you have a choice, right? You can continue letting your brain run amok and be controlled by the devil, which is fear. Or you can say, you know what? I'm not going to let that fear control me. I'm going to operate by faith. You know what? I'm going to feed these seeds. And it's a seed, right? It's not immediate, right? You have to be like, you know what? I've paid all my bills to date, right? I've shown up every single day. Everything's always been taken care of. God's always got my back, right? And you have to just constantly feed that until you actually change your vibration, right? Faith is a very high frequency state.
Yeah.
Fear is very low frequency. When you're in high frequency, you attract other high frequency things, right? And I think so many people, they want these things, but they don't realize that in order to get these things, you have to attract them, right? So you have to really work on your energy. That's why for me, it's like my 4G formula to like control your life, which is gratitude, God, gym, and growth, right?
Yep.
You have to, these are non-negotiable tasks for me every single day, right? I wake up, first thing I do, hop into gratitude, right? Now my mind's like kind of going, I'm a little bit awake. Now time to meditate, connect with God, right? Say my prayers, thank God for the day. And then it's like hop into some growth or gym, right? So either like some wisdom, some spiritual texts, grow in some area, right? It could be business, it could be anything, but you need to grow and develop yourself every day. And then, the gym, which, those are like the 4 things for me that are non-negotiable tasks. If I always do those things, I'm always going to show up as the person that I need to be.
Yeah. No, I love that. The 4G formula is very, very powerful. Like you said, with the energy shift, like, sometimes for me, like, people don't get caught up on the word faith or fear, and they kind of get stuck there. But like, if you break it down to energy, I feel like you can use your intuition to discern whether this is calling you to expand or contract. Mm-hmm. And fear has a very contracting feeling, a very tight feeling, almost like you want to back up. And faith almost has this calling, this like whisper through the dark forest where it's like, it doesn't make sense to go into the dark, but you believe that something greater is on the other side. And if it calls you to be bigger, if it calls you to step into your greatness, I like to just oftentimes think about, like, is this calling me to expand, or is this causing me to contract when I make decisions or come up to these like crossroads in life and trying to figure out, man, what's next? You know? I love you know, what is a very apparent to me is that you are very aware of your contract with yourself, the habits that you need to uphold, the things that you need to do daily in order to keep your roots. And now what seems to be planting an orchard for you in your life, this garden of life that you've created, you've got all these safeguards in place, and you're also very aware of, like, hey man, if I start to slip here, like, this is what I need to do to get back on track. Do you feel like routine is critical?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's my routine has saved me from everything. I mean, over the last few years, like, things have happened. Like, friends have stabbed me in the back. My bank account hit negative $5,000. They had chargebacks, lawsuits, like all kinds of things. And my routine is what saves me, right? You can, you can just like let things happen. And that's where energy, like, everyone thinks money is like the most valuable resource, right? Some people think time is the most valuable resource, but really our energy is the most valuable resource, right? And so when these things hit you, they can have this effect on you, and your energy can be brought down, right? You're angry, like, how can this person sue me? How can this person stab me in the back? Whatever the situation is, right?
Yeah.
You can be sad, you can be depressed, right? These are all low frequency states. So you have to recognize, like, when you're in that low frequency state, and do things that are going to raise your frequency. So for me, it's like hitting the gym, meditating, right? I meditate twice a day. Sometimes my day gets crazy and I'm like completely like unconscious, unaware. I'm just in this like state of, I'm operating in my mind and not my heart, which is like being in that flow state. Right. So I have to catch myself and be like, you know what? Like, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to chill out. Like, I'm going to say some, like, be grateful.
Yep.
I'm going to connect with God and do, you know, maybe I might bust out 100 push-ups, right? Get my energy up from working out, get my energy up from meditating. But you have to do something like to get your energy up. That's why my routine is everything. That allows me 7 days a week. I show up as who I need to be. Nothing can faze me. I have developed an unshakable mindset where nothing that can happen is ever going to have any effect on me.
I love that. That's power. That's a powerful place to be. It's a very powerful place to be. Mm-hmm. So do you feel like your mindset is rare?
Yeah. I mean, diamonds are rare.
Why is this mindset rare? I mean, it's so simple in nature, but why is it rare?
I mean, I think we need losers too, right? Not everybody can be winners. Not everybody can be a leader. Yeah. Not everybody can be that. But I think we all have the choice, right? I don't think I'm anything special. Like, I just make different decisions than other people.
Yeah.
Right. But it is rare, because it's like, if you just look at it, it's like very few people. And that's been the hardest thing for me, is like finding like-minded people. You know, and especially like with dating, it's been very hard, like dating girls because like when you're on such a level, it's like very hard to find other people that are also on a level, right? Like mentally, spiritually, physically, right? It's like I meet a lot of people in Newport that are financially on a level.
Yeah.
But like their spirit's out of whack. Their mind's out of whack, right? Their body's out of whack. And I'm like, I'm not out of whack in any area. Like, I'm growing in all areas, and it's very hard. That's why like we connect, because it's like we're growth-minded people.
Yeah.
So it's very hard, I think, when you're a growth-minded person to like find those people, and you have to just get used to being alone, right? I spent a lot of time alone. I've spent more Fridays and Saturday nights alone in the last 3 years than I actually probably in the last like 8.5 years of being an entrepreneur. It's like so many lonely nights, and you have to just get very comfortable like in your own skin.
Yeah. No, it's such a very it's a powerful realization that, you know, it is rare, but you're also not willing to sacrifice it by hanging out with people who are on a vibration or a frequency that's where you were. You don't want to go backwards, right? So it's like you're always trying to find it, and like you got two choices, right? You can go find it or you can attract it. And one of the things we say in the Rebel Project is you speak up, speak out, and speak often. And I love that for social media and just like speaking your message, because when you're out there being a beacon, that's going to attract the people who are looking for that.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, but if you're not saying anything, like if you have like that covetous mindset where you're holding on to everything,
or fear,
oh, I can't say it because what are people going to think of me, right? If you don't speak up, speak out, speak often, then how are people going to know your frequency, your level? Right?
I think that's the biggest thing, right? Fear is one of the biggest players. One of the most common things I hear from other people, like, oh my God, I can't believe you do that. Like, I love it. Like, I'm so afraid to say those things. Like, I'm so afraid to put out that content. And it's like fear controls people, right? Are you going to, like, you know who's controlled by fear? Cowards. Are you a coward? I'm not.
Mean, that's that brutal truth talk you have to have in the mirror, right?
Like that, and so many people are controlled by fear, but that's one of the most common things I hear from people. Like, I'll run into someone like, "Oh, I love your content. Like, I can't believe you put that stuff out." Like, I'm just so afraid to like say certain things or do certain things, and you know, you got to run toward that fear.
Yeah.
And what's the worst thing that's gonna happen? You might piss somebody off. Like, you might realize a friend you didn't have in the first place, somebody that wasn't your friend. Like, your true friends, they're gonna have your back no matter what.
Yeah, well,
right.
And that's a strong realization too, though, because if you do hit that place, like, what is the worst thing that's going to happen? Someone's going to judge you. Someone's going to say something about you. Someone's going to comment on your feed.
Yeah.
Okay, but you have to ask yourself then, like, who's really in control of your life?
Right. Others, right? Exactly.
You're really
going to let other people control you.
Yes, it's fear in other people's opinions or other people's, comments or something, and it's like, and like you really, like you say, you really have to just look in the mirror and go, okay, well, I'm being controlled by fear. Just acknowledge that, accept it, and also realize that what type of person is controlled by fear? A coward.
Right.
Wow, I'm a coward.
Yeah, you got to call it out as it is.
You got to you call it like it is, and then once you have that realization, like, do I want to be a coward?
Yeah. No,
like but if you don't ask yourself those hard questions, you won't come to the realization that something needs to change. And yeah, having that truth talk with yourself is critical, and calling yourself out and really just like breaking it down. Wow, I'm afraid. What type of person is afraid? A coward. Am I a coward? Right now I am.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
I didn't realize, oh man, and that's heavy.
Right.
And a lot of people, like, that's the point where they go to the bar because they don't want to they don't want to feel that feeling. Or they go and plug in or something. They escape because they don't want to feel that heaviness of truth. And truth has to hit you, and it has to be like, oh wow, like this is not who I am. And you have to find that where in those moments, I feel like it's so critical to look around for the direction or the place that calls you to expand.
Yeah.
Because you have options.
Yeah.
There's not just one way, but you can look and go, man, where am I supposed to expand in this moment?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. What's going to get me closer to that vision of myself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people just see others and they might be looking at them from the wrong lens. That person's fearless. That's not true. Everybody experiences fear. Anybody that says they're fearless is a liar.
Yep.
Right. We all have fear, but do we let that fear control us? Right. I have fear all the time, but I catch it and I check it and I'm like, is this logical? Is this what I want to feed?
Yep.
Am I going to, it's like I force myself to do those things that I'm afraid of. Right. For me, one of those things has been being open on social media. Right now, I'm like, I just post whatever.
Yeah.
But for some time, like, I wasn't active on social media. I realized, the only way to have a business and make millions now, you have to be on social media. So I committed to that. But it was like different being public, talking about things, posting content, right? You wonder, like, what are people going to think of me? But, you have to realize who's in your circle and who's in your corner. And I think that was something that I had to, like, that was one of the big realizations on my growth. Like, that moment when I committed to myself was I had a lot of people that were in my circle that weren't in my corner, and I just cut them out and just really focused on the people that are in my corner. And those people, they're going to love you no matter what. And, like, you'll realize, like, some people, they might just be a 2-minute friend, right? You might have a 5-minute friend. You might have an hour friend where you can go grab dinner with them. But, you can't really engage with them in the way that you used to.
Yep.
And it's not that you cut people out, but you need to make sure that people show up at the level that they need to be, around you, right? If you're a diamond, you got to surround yourself with other diamond-like mentalities, because the sun, it shines equally on the diamond as it does the coal, right? But only the diamond shines back. Yep. So that's where I'm at, is like, I really want to surround myself with other diamond-like mentalities, because they lift you up. They put you on that level. For me, moving to Newport was that first step into that direction of being around people that weren't so judgmental.
Sure. That
were like, oh, that's great, you have ambitions, like, go get it, like, believing in your ambitions, right? And so now it's like, now that's what I'm constantly doing, is just reinvesting in myself. I spend tens of thousands of dollars every single year on programs and being a part of communities where there are other people like me, right? I think social media was the best thing that happened to my life, because I met all these friends through social media, right?
Yep.
Like, I either meet people through the gym or through social media. That's the only people that I like really vibrate with and like, really connect with. And social media, it's introduced me to some of the most like amazing people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, just a second ago, you were talking about, cutting people out and making sure you're only around people who are on the vibration that you are. And, what came to mind is like pruning the branches of your tree of life that you are growing and you are cultivating. And like you said earlier in the podcast, is it's like, you have to break something down and put it through a little bit of stress for it to grow. And, pruning those branches sometimes is painful, but in order to achieve maximum growth, it's necessary. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're diverting energy to the wrong places, to the wrong people, to the wrong activities, to the wrong mindset. And you've got to be ultra careful to just stay on your path. Yeah, I love it. This is exactly why you're on the show. This is exactly why you're guest number one. And I Rebels. So in the Rebel Project, I break Rebels down into a nice acronym, and I believe that Rebels are resilient, they're entrepreneurial, they're bold, they're empowering, they're leaders, and they're servants. And so they're resilient because they withstand all the temptation, all the desire to succumb to fear, or like the connection to, they don't want to miss out on anything, but they're resilient. They stay focused, and they're also entrepreneurial. They're creative. Yeah. They create something that does not exist, and they have faith enough to go down that path. And they're also bold to realize and exercise the power within themselves and show it, share it, give it away. And then they're empowering. They naturally have this charisma that is contagious and attractive to others. And when they shine brighter and they speak louder, they have this natural ability to kind of get people to move. And I love that. And then that goes into leadership. I mean, you're running a company that a year ago you had like 2 employees, now you got 28. And now you're stepping into this service area where you want to be a servant and give back this simple but I got a friend of mine says it's simple but not easy. This simple but not easy framework of do this each day. It's just a little bit, but keep doing it over and over and over again, and you will eventually realize the person that you were supposed to be. You'll realize the path that you're supposed to be on, and you'll realize that you don't need to hold it all for yourself, and you can give it away. And you want to share that message, and so in true rebel fashion. Thank you for demonstrating it in your own life, and then coming up with that excellent 4 G's. I know what is that? Gratitude, God, growth, and Jim. Yeah. And in no particular order, but it seems like gratitude and God come first.
God, God, then gratitude. God first, me second, everything else third.
And it's so simple. Like you're very concise with the advice that you have for yourself, and you're very clear on what you're going to listen to, and it seems like you're also very discerning on what you're not going to listen to. And I love that about you, and I love your journey. Thanks. It's been awesome to watch. Like I said, like even I kind of caught you and met you right as like you were hitting this launch pad, and like the afterburners just kicked in the last couple of years, and it's been like, whoa, dude, this guy hit warp speed. And I was like, I got to talk to him.
It's crazy. It seems like warp speed, but man, it's been it's been a journey. There were definitely times where I felt the goddess of fate like clutched me by the hand, threatened to just smash me to the ground, but my will prevailed, and now I've become the master of my fate. And but it's been 8.5 years of trials and tribulations. Like, I was in the cannabis industry. I've been threatened. Like, I've been followed home. I've met like actual killers and been arrested for a crime I didn't commit, had business partners like commit fraud against me, just everything. And you have to go through those things, right? You have to embrace them. And if you're listening to this and you're going through something hard, you just have to like thank God for it. Be like, you know what? This is an opportunity to level up. Like, thank you. Yep. It's like you go into the gym, right? You know it's going to be hard, but you do it because the outcome that it gets, right? Right. So like when you're going through these hardships and you want this different life, you have to expect it, right? And you have to just change up your perspective to be like, thank you. Like, I'm glad I'm going through this. This is an opportunity for me to get better. This is an opportunity for me to level up. Yep. This is an opportunity for me to be a better leader, right? And you can't like be a victim. You can't make excuses. You just have to like continue leveling up in every way.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So what's next? What's next for Daniel?
To be honest, I'm just I'm going to be opening up like some personal development coaching. I've been wanting to get into the coaching space, but I needed to build myself first, and I wanted to first create a multi-7-figure business before I started telling people how to make money. Yeah. So now I'm like, all right, I'm there financially, I'm there spiritually, mentally, physically. Now I'm like, all right, how can I start helping other people? So probably just going to start opening up some like one-on-one coaching with select people. Okay. And then just continuing growing with my business. I mean, I'm very committed. If I say something, I have to make it happen, right? So for us, it's like our vision with our company is being the #1 growth partner for aesthetic clinics. Yep. In order for us to do that, we're going to help over 100 businesses reach a 7-figure run rate. So that's like really what I'm focused on with my team. That's been my focus for the last like 18 months now, since I pretty much got my first paid client and got my first employee. So really focused on that. Like, we're going to probably have 100 employees by the end of the year. That's our goal for the business. So just keeping the momentum on for that, and then opening up some personal development for select individuals who kind of want to learn what they might be, what they might be doing that's holding them back. Because it's not so much about what they're doing, it's oftentimes about what they're doing, right, that's holding them back. Like, what are the things that they need to let go of, right? Yeah. Do they smoke a lot of weed? Do they drink every weekend? Are they, in control of their devices? Are they watching porn? Are they doing all these things that just like lower your vibration and your frequency? Or, are they making progress on their goals? Yeah,
I love that. So where can people find you?
On Instagram, Daniel Walton 365.
Daniel Walton 365. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well,
we're on it 365 days a year. We don't miss.
Yeah. Well, you guys heard it. If you guys run an aesthetic clinic, then he can help you market that. And if you guys are looking for personal development, you've resonated with any part of Daniel's story, then definitely hit him up on Instagram. Reach out to him. He is a great guy. He's here local in Orange County, Newport Beach area. As you can see, he's got a pretty rigid schedule, so you've got to be on that high vibration and a high frequency if you want to step into his life, but it's worth it. So this guy's a great guy inside and out. I really enjoyed having a conversation with you and just really hearing about how long it took for you to become solid in who you are. And to me, that's very inspiring. That's very uplifting and very motivating to realize that it just takes a little bit of work every single day consistently. Like, one thing that I love is my daily discipline. Just make something your thing, and just go for it, and trust the process, and realize that it might take longer to get to where you need to be or become a person that you're proud of, but the journey is worth it. It's worth it. So put in the time, put in the work, and that's the vibe and message that I got from you today. And trust in yourself and that you can do it.
Yeah, that's why I love meditation. I think meditation is one of the best like daily disciplines anybody can do, because you're doing a task within essentially like you do it, you fail at it, but you're doing it for an indefinite amount of time, right? And then eventually, like, you're like, oh, this like kind of works, right? and then you're like, oh, this actually is like really helpful in my life, right? But like you have to just show up and do it and spend the time on the mat, sitting there every single day for 20 minutes a day, twice a day.
Yep.
And you do that for years, and it's like you build that consistency, right? I think so many people, they're very persistent in their pursuits, and you don't need to be persistent, you need to be consistent, right? Yeah. Consistency over persistency. So if you can be consistent with things, like eventually it's going to compound and you're going to look back. But most people just commit. They're very selfish in their pursuits, right? They do it out of their own selfish interests, right? I want to have a 6-pack because what's that going to do for me, right? I want to be rich because like, what's it going to do for me? But it's the process that's actually going to get you there, right? I don't work out because of the aesthetics. That's just a byproduct. Like I work out because I'm able to show up as the person I need to show up because of that high vibration frequency, right? I don't meditate because of like the benefit to me. I do it because like it allows me to show up like how I need to show up to the world. So do the things that are going to allow you to be that person that you want to become, and commit to the process, and don't chase the result. If you're committed to the process, you're going to get it.
Yeah. There's it's a very simple reminder that there is no finish line. The finish line is not the goal. It's the journey. It's the process. It's the falling in love with the routine, and just like you said, just showing up every single day. Fantastic.
Well, thanks
Great
for having
episode.
me. Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, I'll be back.
Heck yeah. Is there any more? Is there any comments, curse words, or critiques that you got to give to the people, to give to the listeners as we close out the show?
No, I think just develop a routine. I know there's a lot of people in the online space that knock morning routines, but I think it's the recipe for success. First thing I do, connect with God, gratitude, hit the gym, and then same thing before bed, God, gratitude, right? Like I go to bed.
Bookend your day.
I always go to bed being grateful. Thank you for this day, Lord. I didn't ask for this, but you gave it to me. Like we had wins and losses, but regardless, my day's over and I'm giving it back to you. So just being grateful, like authentic. I think those are the things. If you can control the day, if you can win the day, do those things, like compound that over the course of years, you're going to become the person you look up to and admire.
Yeah. I love it. It's simple, people, but it's not easy. And Daniel is living proof that it is possible. And I love his commitment. I love his ability to articulate. And I hope you guys did too. Thank you guys for tuning in to the Rebel Project podcast. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.